The alarm bells rang through the Galactic Council monitoring station like angry metal birds. Commander Veltaran's forearms moved quickly across the control panels as his green eyes tracked the readings on his screen. Something was coming toward them very fast. Too fast. "Sir, we have an unknown ship approaching from the outer rim," called out Technician Mora from her station. Her voice shook a little. In 20 years of service, she had never seen readings like this. Veltaran's tentacles twitched with worry as he studied the data. The ship was moving at speeds that should tear any vessel apart. The energy readings were off the charts. Whatever this thing was, it was bigger and more powerful than anything in the Council's databases. "Send the standard greeting," Veltaran ordered. "Demand identification and compliance with entry protocols." The message went out across space. They waited. The station's crew held their breath. First contact with unknown species was always dangerous, but this felt different. This felt wrong. The reply came back in a voice that was calm and steady. Too calm for someone piloting a ship that should have been turned to space dust by now. "This is Captain Jiwon Kim of the UES Defiant. We're here on urgent business. Stand aside." Veltaran's blood went cold. The voice belonged to a human. He had heard stories about humans from traders and explorers, but most council members believed they were myths. Wild tales of a violent species that lived on the edge of known space. "Captain Kim, you are entering council space without permission," Veltaran transmitted back. "You must submit to inspection and follow proper entry procedures." There was a pause. Then Captain Kim's voice came back, and this time there was something in her tone that made every being on the station feel like prey animals. "Commander, I said we're here on urgent business. I wasn't asking for permission." The ship came into visual range, and Veltaran's worst fears were confirmed. The human vessel looked like it had been built by someone who had never heard the word elegant. Where council ships were smooth and curved, this thing was all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. Massive engines that glowed white-hot were mounted on the back like the fires of hell itself. Weapon systems covered every surface, breaking at least 3 major galactic treaties just by existing. "Get me Admiral Yoon," Veltaran whispered to his communications officer. "Tell her it's an emergency." Admiral Kira Yoon arrived at the monitoring station 6 hours later with a fleet of 12 warships. She was a tall, insect-like being with compound eyes that could see in multiple dimensions. She had dealt with rogue species before, pirates and raiders who thought they could ignore council law. This should be no different. But as she looked at the human ship on her screens, she felt something she had not experienced in 50 years of military service. Fear. The ship was just sitting there, not moving, not threatening, but somehow its very presence felt like a loaded weapon pointed at the galaxy's head. The humans hadn't run when the council fleet arrived. They hadn't tried to negotiate or explain themselves. They just waited. "Captain Kim," Admiral Yoon transmitted. "I am Admiral Kira Yoon of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding." The reply came immediately. "Admiral, with respect, that's not going to happen. We're not here to cause trouble, but we're not here to play games either. If you want to talk, we can talk. But we're staying armed, and we're staying ready." Yoon's mandibles clicked with anger. No one had ever spoken to her like this. In all her years of service, every species had eventually backed down when faced with council authority. Pirates might fight, but they always knew they were breaking the law. These humans seemed to think the law simply didn't apply to them. "You are in violation of 14 different council regulations," Yoon transmitted. "Your ship carries weapons that are banned by treaty. Your presence here is unauthorized." "I understand your position, Admiral," came Kim's voice, "but you need to understand ours. We're here because something bad is coming, something that's going to hit your worlds hard. We can either work together to stop it, or you can waste time trying to arrest us while your people die." The transmission ended, leaving the council fleet in stunned silence. Yoon had commanded fleets in 3 different wars. She had negotiated with dozens of species and brought peace to entire star systems. But she had never encountered anyone like these humans. The human ship began moving again, not away from the council fleet but past it, toward the inner systems where billions of Council citizens lived their lives in peace, protected by laws and treaties that had kept the galaxy stable for thousands of years. "Admiral," called out Captain Yoon B. Lee from the battlecruiser Thunder. "Should we intercept?" Yoon studied the readings from the human ship. Her tactical computers were showing power levels that shouldn't be possible. The vessel's shields were stronger than anything in the Council fleet. Its weapons could probably destroy half her ships before they could return fire. But it wasn't the ship's power that worried her most. It was the calm confidence in Captain Kim's voice. The humans weren't bluffing or trying to intimidate anyone. They were simply stating facts like someone commenting on the weather. "No," Yoon said finally. "Follow them. But keep your distance, and get me a communication link to the High Council. They need to know about this." The human ship moved through Council space like it owned it. It didn't ask for safe passage through shipping lanes. It didn't request permission to scan planets or moons. It just went where it wanted to go, and the Council fleet followed behind like lost children. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Jiwon Kim stood looking at the tactical display. Her ship was surrounded by some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, but she felt no fear. She had a job to do, and she was going to do it with or without the Council's approval. "Captain," said Commander Minho Park, her tactical officer, "the Council ships are maintaining distance, but they're definitely tracking us." "Let them," Kim replied. "We knew this was going to be complicated. The important thing is getting to the asteroid field before it's too late." "Think they'll try to stop us?" asked Lieutenant Taewon Choi from the pilot's seat. At 25, he was the youngest member of the bridge crew, but he flew the Defiant like he had been born to it. Kim smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "They can try." Behind them, Admiral Yoon watched the human ship disappear into hyperspace. In all her years of service, she had never felt so out of control. The humans had entered Council space, ignored every law and regulation, and departed on their own schedule. They had been polite about it, even respectful in their own way, but they had made it clear that Council authority meant nothing to them. The worst part was that Yoon had let them go, not because she was afraid of a fight, but because something in Captain Kim's voice had convinced her that the humans really were trying to help, that whatever was coming was bad enough to justify their complete disregard for proper procedure. As her fleet prepared to follow the human ship to whatever destination they had chosen, Yoon realized that everything had changed. For thousands of years, the galaxy had operated on the principle that civilization meant following rules, respecting authority, and working within established systems. The humans had just proven that principle wrong, and somehow, that terrified her more than any weapon they carried. 3 days after the fighter demonstration, the truth finally came out. Dr. Sunho Nam, the chief scientist aboard the human ship, requested a meeting with the Council representatives. He appeared on their communication screens as a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a serious expression. "Admiral Yoon, Council members, I think it's time we explained why we're here," Dr. Nam said. His voice was calm and professional, like a teacher addressing his students. Admiral Yoon leaned forward in her command chair. "We're listening, Doctor." 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching from the outer rim of the galaxy. A large fleet of ships moving toward inhabited space. We tried to make contact, but they didn't respond to any of our communications. On the screen, Dr. Nam's expression grew darker. 3 weeks ago, they destroyed the research station at Kepler 442, completely wiped it out. No survivors, no warning, no explanation, just total destruction. Captain Yoonbi Lee felt her blood turn cold. The research station at Kepler 442 housed over 10,000 beings from dozens of different species. It was a peaceful scientific outpost with no military value whatsoever. "Who are they?" Yoon asked. "We don't know their name or their origin, but we've been tracking their movements. They're heading directly for the main Council worlds. Based on their current speed, they'll arrive here in less than 2 days." The silence that followed was deafening. Yoon stared at the human scientist, trying to process what she had just heard. An unknown enemy was approaching Council space, and the Council knew nothing about it. "Why didn't you warn us immediately?" Yoon demanded. Dr. Nam sighed. "We tried, We sent messages through normal diplomatic channels 3 months ago. Your people said they would review our claims and respond through proper procedures. We never heard back. Counselor Yeniseo appeared on the communication screen from the council homeworld. Her scaled face showed obvious anger and disbelief. "This is impossible," she declared. "Our long-range sensors would have detected any approaching fleet. You must be mistaken. Your sensors are designed to detect normal ships using standard propulsion," Dr. Nam replied patiently. "These aren't normal ships. They use some kind of technology we've never seen before. They barely show up on conventional sensors." Captain Kim's voice cut into the conversation. "Counselor Seo, with respect, we didn't come here to debate what's possible. We came here to save lives. The enemy fleet will arrive in 47 hours. Your current defenses won't stop them." "By what authority do you presume to make such judgments?" SEO demanded. "The Council has protected this galaxy for thousands of years. We don't need help from some unknown species that ignores our laws." The response came immediately, and Captain Kim's voice carried an edge that made everyone listening feel like they were standing next to a sleeping volcano. "By the authority of being able to do something about it." Engineering Chief Dong-Yun Lim joined the conversation from the asteroid field, where the human mining operations continued at full speed. Behind him, massive construction machines worked to build defensive platforms and weapon systems. "Counselor," Lim said respectfully, "we've been analyzing your defensive capabilities. Your ships are well built, and your crews are experienced, but your weapons and shields are designed for fighting other Council species. These attackers use different technology. Your current armaments will barely scratch their hulls." "Then what do you propose?" Admiral Yoon asked. She was beginning to realize that her worst fears might be coming true. "We can upgrade your ships," Lim replied. "Share our weapons technology with you. Show your crews how to fight against this kind of enemy. But we need to start now. In 47 hours, it'll be too late." Counselor Seo's scaled face flushed with anger. "You expect us to trust you completely? To let you modify our ships with your technology? We know nothing about you or your intentions." Captain Kim appeared on screen again, and her expression was deadly serious. "Counselor, I understand your position. You've spent thousands of years building a stable civilization based on laws and procedures. The idea of trusting strangers goes against everything you believe in." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But in 47 hours? None of that will matter. Your laws won't stop energy beams from burning your cities. Your procedures won't protect your children from being killed. You can maintain your dignity and principles while your people die, or you can let us help you save them." The communication went silent for a long moment. Admiral Yoon looked at the tactical displays showing the human operations in the asteroid field. Massive defensive platforms were taking shape with impossible speed. Weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the Council arsenal were being assembled and tested. "What kind of modifications are you talking about?" Yoon asked finally. "Engineering." Chief Lim smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "We can increase your shield strength by 300%. Your weapons will hit harder and penetrate deeper. Your ships will be faster and more maneuverable. But the most important thing is tactical training." "What do you mean?" "Your crews fight like civilized beings," Lim explained. "You try to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure. You follow rules of engagement and give your enemies chances to surrender. These attackers don't follow any rules. They destroy everything they encounter. Your people need to learn how to fight like that." Commander Minho Park joined the conversation from the Defiance Bridge. "Admiral, we're not asking you to become like them. We're asking you to become like us. Humans have been fighting impossible odds for our entire history. We know how to win when everything is against us. And what do you want in return?" "Counselor," Seo demanded suspiciously. "Nothing," Captain Kim replied. "We're not here to conquer or rule or make demands. We're here because letting innocent people die when we can prevent it goes against everything we believe in. Help us help you. That's all we're asking." Admiral Yoon made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. "Captain Kim, I'm authorizing you to begin modifications on our ships. Chief Lim, send your teams over. We'll work together." "Admiral," Counselor Seo protested. You don't have the authority to make such decisions without council approval. With respect, Counselor, Yoon replied. In 47 hours, there might not be a council left to approve anything. I'm not going to let procedure get in the way of protecting our people. Within hours, human engineering teams were aboard Council, ships working alongside alien crews to install new weapons and shield systems. The humans shared their technology freely, explaining how everything worked and teaching the Council engineers to maintain the new systems themselves. Captain Yoonbi Lee watched in amazement as human technicians worked on her ship. They moved with practiced efficiency, installing equipment that should have taken weeks to properly integrate. But somehow they made it all work perfectly in just a few hours. How do you do this so fast? Lee asked Chief Lim as he supervised the installation of new weapons on the Thunder. Practice, Lim replied with a grin. Humans have been modifying ships and weapons for centuries. We're good at making things work, even when they shouldn't. But why are you helping us? What do you gain from this? Lim stopped working and looked at her seriously. Captain, my daughter is about the same age as some of your crew members. If someone was coming to hurt her, I'd want someone to help protect her. It's that simple. As the modifications continued, Admiral Yoon found herself working more closely with the humans than she had ever imagined possible. They were nothing like what she had expected. They were professional, competent, and completely dedicated to the task at hand. But what impressed her most was their attitude. They didn't act like saviors or heroes. They acted like people doing a job that needed to be done. No drama, no demands for gratitude, no expectations of reward, just focused, determined work to protect people they had never met. It was, Yoon realized, exactly the kind of behavior the galaxy needed more of. The countdown continued. 47 hours became 36, then 24. The human defensive platforms in the asteroid field were nearly complete. The Council ships had been upgraded with human technology. Crews from both species trained together, learning to fight as a unified force. And somewhere in the darkness of space, an enemy fleet continued its approach toward a galaxy that was finally preparing to defend itself properly. Admiral Kira Yoon had spent 3 days trying to make sense of the situation. The human ship had stopped at an asteroid field in the neutral zone between Council space and the unknown regions. They had immediately begun setting up mining operations and defensive positions without asking anyone's permission. The Council's first contact protocols were clear. Any new species had to submit to medical quarantine for 30 days. Their technology had to be evaluated for safety. Their culture had to be studied to ensure compatibility with galactic civilization. The process usually took months. The humans had ignored all of it. Captain Kim, Yoon transmitted from her flagship, I must insist that you follow proper first contact procedures. For the safety of both our species, you need to submit to quarantine and inspection. The reply came from Commander Minho Park, the human tactical officer. His voice was just as calm as his captain's, but there was something underneath it that made Yoon's skin crawl. Admiral, we appreciate your concern, but we're on a schedule. If you want to talk, we can talk while we work. Through her ship's sensors, Yoon watched the humans deploy mining equipment that moved faster and more efficiently than anything she had ever seen. Large machines extracted rare metals from the asteroids while smaller craft built defensive structures at impossible speed. The humans worked like they had done this 1,000 times before. This is unacceptable, Yoon transmitted. You cannot simply claim territory in neutral space and begin mining operations. There are laws, treaties, established procedures. Laws are fine, came Captain Kim's voice. But they don't stop what's coming. We can follow your procedures after we save your people. Captain Yoonbi Lee of the Council Enforcement Division had heard enough. She commanded the battlecruiser Thunder, one of the most advanced ships in the fleet. Her crew were veterans with decades of experience. If anyone could handle these upstart humans, it was her. Admiral, request permission to intercept, Lee transmitted. These humans think they can do whatever they want. Time to show them they're wrong. Yoon hesitated. Part of her wanted to put these humans in their place, but something about their confidence worried her. They acted like they could back up their bold words. Proceed with caution, Captain Lee. We don't know what their ship is capable of. Lee smiled. She had dealt with tough opponents before. The key was showing them who was in charge from the beginning. "This is Captain Lee of the GCS Thunder," she transmitted to the human ship. "You are ordered to cease all operations and prepare for inspection. This is your final warning." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for the next century. The human ship didn't retreat or power down its weapons. Instead, it launched dozens of small fighter craft that moved like nothing Lee had ever seen. The little ships accelerated so fast they should have turned their pilots into pudding. They changed direction so quickly that Lee's tactical computers couldn't keep up with their movements. "Evasive maneuvers," Lee ordered, but it was too late. The human fighters swarmed through her formation like angry wasps. They didn't fire any weapons, but they didn't need to. They flew so close to the Council ships that their energy shields touched. They performed impossible loops and turns around the larger vessels, demonstrating complete control of the battle space. Lieutenant Taewan Choi led the human fighter squadron in a display of flying that left the Council pilots speechless. He guided his small craft between the Thunder's weapon systems, over its bridge and around its engines in a pattern so complex that Lee's navigation officer got dizzy just watching. "How are they doing that?" Lee's pilot whispered. "The G-forces alone should kill them." Lee didn't have an answer. The human fighters were pulling maneuvers that should have been impossible. Their pilots should have been unconscious or dead. Instead, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. One of the human fighters flew directly over the Thunder's main bridge. As it passed, Choi's voice came through on the communication channel. "Nice ship, Captain. Mind if we take a closer look?" The fighter then performed a barrel roll so close to the Thunder's hull that paint scraped off both vessels. Lee's crew watched in amazement as the young human pilot waved at them through the bridge windows before flying away. "Admiral," Lee transmitted back to Yoon, her voice shaking. "We have a problem. These humans, they're not like anything we've seen before." Back on the Defiant, Captain Kim watched the display with satisfaction. The Council ships were backing away, their crews clearly rattled by the demonstration. It hadn't been necessary to fire a shot or make any threats. Sometimes the best way to make a point was to show what you could do rather than talk about it. "Nice work, Choi," Kim said into her communicator. "Bring the fighters back home." "Yes, Captain," came the young pilot's voice. "The Council ships are definitely keeping their distance now." Commander Park studied the tactical display. "Think they got the message?" "I think they understand we're not going away," Kim replied, "whether they like it or not." On the Thunder, Captain Lee was trying to make sense of what she had just witnessed. Her ship carried some of the best pilots in the galaxy, veterans with years of training and combat experience, but they had been outflown by what appeared to be human children. "Captain," her navigation officer said quietly, "I've been analyzing their flight patterns. The G-forces their pilots experienced should have killed them. Multiple times. Then, how did they survive? I don't know. Either their technology is far beyond ours, or humans are physically much tougher than we thought." Lee considered both possibilities and didn't like either one. If the humans had better technology, the Council was in trouble. If humans were naturally that much stronger and faster, the Council was in even more trouble. Admiral Yoon had watched the entire encounter from her flagship. The humans had made their point without firing a shot or making any direct threats. They had simply demonstrated that they could do whatever they wanted, and the Council fleet couldn't stop them. "Get me a communication link to the High Council," Yoon ordered. "They need to know what we're dealing with." "Admiral," her communications officer replied, "the High Council wants to speak with you immediately. They've been monitoring our transmissions." The pure, holographic image of High Counselor Thane appeared on the bridge. The ancient being's many eyes focused on Yoon with obvious concern. "Admiral, report on the human situation." "Sir, we're dealing with a species unlike anything in our databases. They ignore our authority, violate our laws, and demonstrate military capabilities that exceed our own. But they claim to be here to help us. Help us with what? They say something is coming, something dangerous. They're building defensive positions in the asteroid field." Counselor Thane was quiet for a long moment. "What is your assessment of their intentions?" Yoon looked at the tactical display showing the human ship and its busy mining operations. Sir, I believe they're telling the truth. They could have destroyed our fleet easily, but they're choosing not to. They're working instead of fighting. That suggests they really are here to help. But they refuse to follow proper procedures? Completely. They act like our laws and regulations don't exist. Another long pause. Continue monitoring the situation, Admiral. Do not engage unless they become actively hostile, but be prepared for anything. The transmission ended, leaving Yoon alone with her thoughts. In 40 years of military service, she had never encountered a situation like this. The humans were clearly powerful enough to take whatever they wanted. Instead, they were working to build something they claimed would protect Council worlds from an unknown threat. The question was whether to trust them or try to stop them. And Yoon was beginning to realize that they might not have a choice in the matter. The humans had made it clear that they would do what they thought was right, with or without permission. The Council could either work with them or get out of their way. For a civilization built on laws and procedures, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The enemy arrived exactly when the humans said they would. Admiral Kira Yoon stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the long-range sensors as dozens of massive ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The vessels were dark and angular, like pieces of a nightmare given physical form. They moved in perfect formation, heading directly toward the inhabited worlds where billions of Council citizens lived their lives in peaceful ignorance. Admiral, her sensor officer reported, "I'm reading 47 enemy ships. The largest is over 3 kilometers long. Energy signatures are significant." That was military speak for terrifying beyond measure, and everyone on the bridge knew it. The human defensive platforms in the asteroid field immediately came online, their massive weapon systems powering up with a deep humming sound that could be felt through the hulls of nearby ships. Captain Ji-won Kim's voice came through the communication system, calm and steady as always. "All Council ships, this is the Defiant. Take defensive positions around the platforms. Let them come to us." Admiral Yoon looked at her tactical display. The combined human and Council fleet looked impressive, but it was still outnumbered 2-1 by an enemy that used unknown technology. In any normal engagement, this would be called a suicide mission. But somehow, the humans didn't seem worried. The enemy fleet sent one transmission. It came in a language that none of the translation systems could understand, but the message was clear enough. There were images of planets burning, populations fleeing, cities turned to ash. Then came what appeared to be a countdown timer, giving the defenders 10 minutes to surrender unconditionally. Captain Kim's response was broadcast on all frequencies, so that every ship in both fleets could hear it. No. That was it. One word. No explanation, no negotiation, no attempt at diplomacy. Just a simple, absolute refusal. Admiral Yoon had spent her entire career studying warfare and military tactics. She had read about famous battles and legendary commanders. But she had never heard anyone respond to an ultimatum with such pure, uncompromising defiance. The 10-minute countdown reached 0. The enemy fleet opened fire. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Energy beams that could punch through moons struck the human defensive platforms, only to be absorbed by shields that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The platforms returned fire with weapons that lit up space like miniature suns, sending spears of concentrated energy across the void. Commander Hyejin-oh led the first squadron of human fighters into the heart of the enemy formation. Her pilots flew ships that moved like living things, twisting and turning through enemy fire in patterns that made Yoon's tactical computers give up trying to track them. Blue Squadron hit their command ship, Oh ordered over the communication channel. Red Squadron, take out those weapon platforms. Gold Squadron, cover our big ships. The human fighters moved as one, flowing around the enemy vessels like water around rocks. They fired precisely, targeting weak points that shouldn't have been visible to anyone except expert engineers. Every shot counted. Every maneuver had a purpose. Captain Yunbi Lee commanded the Thunder as it moved into position alongside a human defensive platform. The modifications to her ship were working perfectly. Her shields held against enemy fire. That would have destroyed her vessel hours earlier, and her new weapons cut through enemy hulls like hot knives through butter. "This is incredible," her weapons officer reported. "Our firepower has increased by 400%. The enemy shields can't handle our new plasma cannons." But it was the tactical coordination that truly impressed Lee. The humans had given every council ship precise instructions on where to be and what to target. Instead of the usual chaotic free-for-all that characterized most space battles, the Allied fleet moved like a single organism with a unified purpose. Strategic Coordinator Wu Jinbei directed the overall battle from the Defiance Combat Center. His screen showed every ship in both fleets, tracking damage, ammunition, and crew status in real time. He made adjustments constantly, moving ships to cover weak points and concentrate fire on priority targets. "Admiral Yun," Bei transmitted, "move your heavy cruisers to Grid 7 Alpha. The enemy is trying to flank our left side." Yun followed the instruction without question. Her ships moved into position just as a group of enemy vessels tried to break through the defensive line. The Council cruisers were ready for them, and the enemy attack was stopped cold. "How did you know they were going to do that?" Yun asked. "Pattern recognition," Bei replied. "We've fought enemies like this before. They're tactically predictable once you understand their mindset." On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Kim watched the battle unfold with the focused attention of a master craftsman at work. Every decision was calculated, every move planned 3 steps ahead. This wasn't just warfare. It was warfare as an art form. "Commander Park," she said to her tactical officer. "Target their flagship. Full spread, all weapons." "Yes, Captain." Targeting the big one. The Defiant's main guns fired simultaneously, sending a concentrated barrage of energy that struck the enemy command ship like the hammer of an angry god. The massive vessel's shields flared and failed, and explosions began rippling along its hull. But instead of celebrating, Kim immediately focused on the next target. There was no time for satisfaction, no pause to admire their success. The job wasn't finished yet. Lieutenant Taewon Choi piloted his fighter through a maze of enemy fire, his young face set in concentration. He had trained for scenarios like this, but the reality was more intense than any simulation. Energy beams that could vaporize his ship passed within meters of his cockpit. "Choi, you've got 3 bogeys on your tail," came Commander Oh's voice, through his headset. "I see them," Choi replied, pulling his fighter into a spiral dive that took him between 2 enemy capital ships. The pursuing fighters tried to follow, but crashed into each other when they couldn't match his maneuvers. "Nice. Flying, kid," Oh said with approval. "Now get back to the formation." The battle raged for 3 hours. Ships on both sides took damage, but the human tactical coordination began to tell. The enemy fleet, which had probably destroyed dozens of civilizations through sheer brute force, found itself being systematically dismantled by opponents who fought smarter rather than harder. Admiral Yun watched in amazement as the humans turned what should have been a desperate defensive action into a strategic masterpiece. They used the Council ship's defensive nature as a strength, creating overlapping fields of fire that no enemy vessel could penetrate. They protected damaged Allied ships while concentrating fire on enemy weak points. Most importantly, they kept casualties to a minimum. When Council ships took serious damage, human rescue vessels immediately moved in to evacuate crews. When alien crew members were injured, human medical teams treated them with the same care they gave their own people. "Admiral," reported her damage control officer, "we've lost only 2 ships. The humans have lost none." Yoon could barely believe it. In a battle this size, she had expected to lose at least half her fleet. Instead, the humans had turned the engagement into a one-sided victory. The enemy fleet began to retreat, but Captain Kim wasn't finished with them. "All ships pursue and destroy," she ordered. "Don't let any of them escape to attack other worlds." The Allied fleet gave chase, hunting down the surviving enemy vessels with ruthless efficiency. Within an hour, the last enemy ship had been destroyed, its wreckage joining the debris field that marked the site of the battle. Space fell silent except for the soft hum of ship engines and the crackle of cooling weapon systems. The greatest threat the galaxy had faced in 1,000 years had been defeated by a combined force that hadn't existed a week earlier. Admiral Yoon looked at her tactical display, trying to process what she had just witnessed. The humans had not just won a battle. They had won it so completely that the enemy had been utterly destroyed. And they had done it while protecting their allies and minimizing friendly casualties. It was the kind of victory that military academies would study for centuries to come, and it had been achieved by a species that had arrived in Council space less than a week ago, ignored every law and regulation, and demanded nothing in return for their help. Captain Kim's voice came through the communication system one final time. "All ships, good work. Let's go home." 2 weeks after the battle, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The enemy fleet that had destroyed 17 civilizations and seemed unstoppable had been completely eliminated. More importantly, it had been done by a combined force of humans and council ships working together. Admiral Kira Yoon stood in the council chambers on the homeworld, watching as Captain Ji-won Kim prepared to address the full assembly. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Hall, all of them eager to hear from the human who had helped save their worlds. The humans had been invited to join the Galactic Council, to take their place among the civilized species of the galaxy. It was the highest honor the Council could bestow, reserved for species that had proven themselves worthy of trust and respect. Captain Kim walked to the speaker's platform with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout the crisis. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank. She looked like what she was, a professional doing her job. "Honored representatives," Kim began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I want to thank you for this invitation. It's an honor to be asked to join your council." A murmur of approval ran through the assembled delegates. Many of them had expected the humans to accept immediately, to be grateful for the opportunity to become part of galactic civilization. However, Kim continued, and the chamber fell silent. "We must respectfully decline." The silence stretched on for several seconds. Finally, High Counselor Thane spoke from his position at the center of the assembly. "Captain Kim, I'm not sure I understand. Are you rejecting our offer of membership?" "Not rejecting, Counselor. We're choosing a different path." Kim looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of different species. "We didn't come here to join your system or to overthrow it. We came because there was work to be done." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The galaxy is a big place with many threats and many opportunities. You've built something wonderful here, a civilization based on laws and cooperation and peaceful discussion. We respect that, but it's not our way." Counselor Yana Seo, who had opposed the humans from the beginning, stood up from her seat. "Then what is your way, Captain? What do you want from us?" Kim smiled, and for the first time since arriving in council space, she looked genuinely pleased. "We want to work with you when it makes sense. We want to trade with you, learn from you, maybe share some adventures, but we won't ask your permission to do what's right. And if we disagree with your definition of what's right," SEO pressed, "then we'll disagree. That's fine. The galaxy is big enough for different approaches to the same problems." Kim's expression grew more serious. "But if innocent people are in danger and we can help them, we will, whether you approve or not." Admiral Yoon found herself nodding in agreement. During the battle, she had seen how the humans operated. They didn't waste time with committees or approval processes when lives were at stake. They just acted, quickly and effectively. Dr. Jeon Han, the human cultural anthropologist, stepped forward to address the assembly. She was a small woman, with bright eyes and an easy smile. "Honorable representatives, we understand that our way of doing things might seem chaotic or dangerous to you, but consider this. In the past week, humans and council forces worked together to achieve something that neither could have done alone. We didn't need to join your organization to cooperate with you." She gestured toward Admiral Yoon. "Admiral Yoon made the decision to trust us when it mattered most. Captain Lee led council ships into battle alongside human vessels. Chief Lim shared our technology freely, asking nothing in return. We proved that different approaches can work, together when they need to. High Counselor Thane leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Han, what you're describing sounds like chaos. How can we have stable relationships with species that refuse to follow established procedures? With respect, Counselor, Dr. Han replied, stable doesn't always mean effective. Your procedures work well for normal situations. But when something like the enemy fleet appears, you need people who can act quickly without waiting for approval. She looked around the chamber. We're not asking you to change your system. We're asking you to recognize that different systems can coexist and even help each other. Captain Kim returned to the speaker's platform. The galaxy faces many threats. Counselor Thane, some of them require careful thought and diplomatic solutions. Others require immediate action. We suggest that you keep doing what you do best and let us do what we do best. And what happens when our approaches conflict? Asked Counselor Seo. Then we'll work it out like civilized beings, Kim replied. We'll talk, we'll negotiate, we'll find compromises, but we won't let procedure get in the way of protecting innocent lives. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives supported the human position, arguing that the galaxy needed species willing to act quickly in crisis situations. Others worried about the precedent of allowing any group to ignore established laws and procedures. In the end, they reached a compromise that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The humans would not join the Council, but they would establish formal diplomatic relations. They would respect Council territory and laws when operating in Council space, but they reserved the right to act independently when they deemed it necessary. Most importantly, they agreed to share information about threats to galactic security and to coordinate their responses when possible. Admiral Yoon was appointed as the first Council liaison to humanity, a position that would require her to understand and work with a species that operated on completely different principles than her own people. Captain Kim, Yoon said after the formal ceremonies were complete, I have to ask, will we see you again? Kim looked out through the chamber's great windows at the stars beyond. Admiral, the galaxy is full of problems that need solving. Pirates to catch, disasters to prevent, people to help. We'll be around. And you'll let us know when you're coming? Kim's smile was answer enough. 3 days later, the UES Defiant departed from Council space as suddenly as it had arrived. Long-range sensors tracked it heading toward the outer rim, where unexplored regions held unknown dangers and opportunities. But the humans left something behind that was more valuable than any technology or weapon. They left an example of what could be accomplished when different approaches worked together toward a common goal. Within months, other Council species began adopting some human methodologies. Emergency response teams were given authority to act immediately in crisis situations, rather than waiting for approval. Military commanders were trained to think tactically rather than just defensively. Scientists were encouraged to share discoveries quickly, rather than going through lengthy review processes. The galaxy remained diverse, with hundreds of different species following their own customs and traditions. But it had learned something important from humanity. Sometimes the right thing to do was simply to do the right thing, regardless of who gave permission. Admiral Yoon often stood on the observation deck of her new ship, looking out at the stars and wondering where the humans might be. She had learned to appreciate their direct approach to problems, their willingness to act when action was needed, and their complete lack of interest in taking credit for their successes. Most of all, she had learned that cooperation didn't require conformity. Different species could work together without becoming the same, could respect each other without agreeing on everything. The galaxy was a safer place because the humans had arrived when they were needed most. But it was a better place because they had left it free to find its own way forward. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Defiant continued its journey. Captain Kim and her crew moved toward whatever problem needed solving next, carrying with them the simple principle that had guided humanity for centuries. When good people needed help, you helped them. When bad people threatened innocence, you stopped them. You didn't ask for permission, you didn't wait for approval, and you didn't expect gratitude. You just did what needed to be done. The galaxy had learned that lesson well, and in the years to come, when new threats emerged and new challenges arose, there would always be someone ready to act, whether they had permission or not. The age of asking for approval to do what was right had ended. The age of simply doing it had begun, and somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, a dangerous ship continued on its way, ready to prove once again that the most civilized thing you could do was to protect civilization itself, regardless of what the rules said about it. The stars waited, as they always had, for those brave enough to venture into the unknown and strong enough to defend what was worth defending. The humans had shown the way. Now it was up to everyone else to follow.